Hi, everyone. My name is Jim Theofelis, and I'm thrilled to be here with you all to celebrate 20 years of remarkable impact from the Mockingbird Society. And I just want to begin by thanking you all at home for joining us and for all of your support over the years. And in particular, I want to shout out to all the current and ex-staff and board members, volunteers, donors, and of course, the young people themselves who brought forth the courage and the leadership to bring us where we are here today. So you're all a big part of this, and I thank you. And I'm thrilled to be here with Deonate Cruz. Deonate, how you doing? And do you remember how we met actually?
You know, I remember that we met in November 2010 when I first started at the Mockingbird Society. But a very interesting fact that a lot of people don't know is that our paths were intertwined long before 2010. And so we began to talk and dialogue about the Mockingbird family motto and my grandparents, and you had let me know that my grandparents were one of the first Constellation parents, and that's when it all kind of came together and made sense for me.
I think one of the things I love about community, and I think Mockingbird Society exemplifies what it means to be part of a community, is it's not uncommon in community to know someone's people or their relative before you actually know them, and that's how you make the connection. So it really warmed my heart for you to be part of the Mockingbird family program and not even know that, because that was what my hope and vision was all along, is that we could transform this system so that children and adolescents actually felt like they were being raised by family and community rather than by a system. So the thought that you were part of this and getting the love of Carol, who you now refer to as Grandma, and I love the stories. I'll say, so how's your grandma? How's Carol? Oh, I got to go there this Sunday for dinner. So it proves you're still part of that, which is what we want out of the Mockingbird family program, is those lifelong, enduring relationships.
When I first came to the Mockingbird family model, I'd gone through a couple social workers. I'd also gone through a couple placements in foster care, more than 30 plus relocations within foster care to be exact, before my 14th birthday. And I remember the social worker being like, come on, we got this placement. It's a temporary placement. And then I walk in the door and I see kids running around and I'm like, this is different. And then somebody greeted me at the door and they were like, hey, and that was my grandma. That was the first time I ever met my grandma. And when you've been through 30 plus relocations within foster care, you begin to kind of identify what environments are different, what's authentic. But from the moment that I entered that house, I really felt at home. The Mockingbird family model really has this deep connection that it builds with the youth and young adults, but also with the community. It gives us a sense of family. And I have to say, that is my family. I aged out at 19 from that. But now we're talking 10 years later, and every weekend I still go to Grandma's house. Every weekend I still check in with Grandma and Grandpa. And it really speaks to the familiar connection that we have, that's built within the Mockingbird family model. When we talk about forever homes, when we talk about chosen family, that was my forever home. That is my chosen family.
That's what this system on a macro level needs to focus on. Systems don't change lives, programs don't change lives, relationships change lives. And that's what Mockingbird family was all about from the beginning.
When I started at the Mockingbird Society in 2010, I was a network representative. And a network representative's job is to do the bulk of the advocacy work within the youth programs. But really what it is telling the story of our lived experience within foster care. Today, it feels a little intuitive, right? And so when we think about, these things and we think about kind of like what's the best way to solve these, we gotta kind of ask ourselves, who knows best? Those people know best. They have their experience, they can tell you best about it. But when I was growing up in foster care, especially before my 14th birthday, that really wasn't the case. And so for me, that's really the impact that it's had on me. It's given me a sense of self, it's given me a sense of self-worth. It's allowed me to tell my story. Growing up in the system, I didn't acknowledge for the longest time, the trauma that I experienced going through the system. And so when we think about that and we think about the young people, we often use this word of resiliency. You went through this system, but that's okay now because you're resilient, right? And a friend of mine, and actually one of our former staff, at the Mockingbird Society had said something to me recently that no young person should ever have to find out how strong that they can be. And that's what I think of when I think of the Mockingbird Society and what it means to advocate. We're giving people an opportunity to heal that trauma. But also one of those Jimisms that you say is that we're doing this, not necessarily for us, because when I was advocating, I wasn't in foster care anymore. I had aged out of foster care. And so we're doing this, like you often say, for that 5-year-old who doesn't even know that they're going to be in foster care. We're paving a way so young people never have to actually figure out how strong they have to be able to survive a traumatic experience. And for me, that's where the power is. And when I think about, any of my younger siblings who might be in foster care, anybody extended family who I might not even know of, it's important for me to be able to speak up and change a system that impacts so many young people, especially those who are near and dear to me.
I'm so glad you talked about the healing part of that, and it warms my heart that you feel that, because I often said that before I started Mockingbird, I was a counselor and a therapist, but I often said I could sit there for 10 hours a week with a young person and not have the same impact of them healing and feeling a meaningful part of community, a meaningful member of the table of community, going down to Olympia, meeting a legislator, getting that legislator to buy into the idea and say, yes, I'll sponsor that. Or attend the summit or youth advocacy day and say, wow, I want to help these young people. And then watch that idea go through the committee hearings, go through all of the different votes, ultimately being at the governor's office when he's signing or she's signing a bill that came from the idea of young people and just how young people would sit up tall knowing that they were involved in something meaningful. So I think it was a creative strategy that really brought young people into a leadership role. And like I say, one of the things I used to say back then a lot is, at Mockingbird, you are a leader to help us figure out how to get ready for that 5-year-old child. And so we wanted to reframe, we wanted to change the mindset for young people themselves, but quite frankly, also for adults, for decision makers. We wanted to shift the mindset from those kids to our kids. And then, of course, all of the legislative successes that we've had and that they continue to have, going back to, you mentioned it, extended foster care, which started as foster care to 21. That was really our first major piece of legislation. Both the foster care to 21 and the extended foster care program started from young people's ideas at the Mockingbird Society. And I just think that's a remarkable thing, that this thing is nationwide now. Almost all states have opted in. And again, it started in our little office at the Mockingbird Society. The last thing I just want to say about that is we've had research, empirical research conducted on both foster care to 21 and on extended foster care. And the results are just so profound. The thing I love is for every dollar invested, it gets $5 back for the young person. So, and that's in life earnings, that's having, connected to the other findings, which are they reduce early parenting, they reduce their criminal behavior, both at the same rate as their peers in college and out in the world. If you take care of young people, if you give them the basic needs and so they can focus on thriving rather than surviving, the outcomes are going to be better.
Being in foster care to 21, the pilot program was, it had a huge impact on me. I remember grandma saying, no, you deserve this opportunity as well. You deserve to have a safe place to stay. When we talk about Mama knows, my grandma knew what was good for us, oftentimes when we didn't even know what was good for us. She saw the goodness in us long before we saw the goodness in ourselves. She saw the potential in us and she wanted us to realize that. And so for me, it really started with that. It was an opportunity for me. I had a safe place to stay. I had a prolonged connection with the people who loved me and people who I loved, the family that I chose. but I also had an opportunity to go to school, which was something that many of my peers didn't have because they didn't have that stability. I think one of the interesting things about extended foster care is that you can't really understand the impact that it has on young people unless you understand the experiences that young people have in foster care.
Because when Mockingbird, if you recall, when we were doing this work, you literally were kicked out of the system at either age 18 or when you secured your high school diploma / GED, whichever came second.
You had 10-year-olds in foster care who understood that very well. And so you had people 8 years before they were ready to age out of foster care already thinking about, what is my 18th birthday gonna look like? Many people, I don't know if they understand that connection. At one point, foster care was cited as being the leading reason why youth and young adults become homeless at the age of 18.
Like we had a system that trained kids to underachieve because if they achieved, the reward was to become homeless.
For many of us, there's a lack of stability when we're growing up in the system, a lack of foundational skills being taught, a lack of planning, but also, when we talk about at 18, really those young people becoming homeless on their 18th birthday, that's real. For many of us, there was such a disconnect between our families who we were taken from and the way that we were taken from our families, that those relationships aren't there. And without that planning and that foundation, many of us have ended up homeless. And so the system has taught us, to be honest, many skills on how to survive in a very complex setting. And for some of us, those skills are also transferable to the streets.
I often say this, if you want to end adult homelessness, you first have to end youth homelessness, because we know that 30 to 50% of the adults on the streets in homelessness were homeless as young people, as adolescents, as young adults. I just love our commitment to, and this fits with homelessness, young people who identify as LGBTQ and youth of color, who the disproportionality is just so off the charts about how young people in those demographics are much more likely to experience both foster care and homelessness. So I'm proud of the work, again, that the current staff have done and continue to do in making sure that young people experiencing homelessness get the same opportunities that we want to give to young people experiencing foster care.
When I think about all the young people who are in foster care, when I think about all the reps who I work with, all the young people who have come through, your vision has really impacted us in a major way, in a very positive way. And so now that we're 20 years down the road and we're hitting this 20th anniversary, I have to ask you, what does 20 years of Mockingbird mean to you?
Well, as you might guess, it means everything to me. I'm so proud to have been part of it and to still be part of it. I'm proud of you and the thousands of young people like you that have come up through the Mockingbird Family Model, the Youth Network, have played so many different kinds of roles. There's a funny story that I like to tell. It's a true story. It was right at the beginning, and we had exhausted most of our funds. There was not even, other than this pie-in-the-sky proposal that I wrote to Senator Patty Murray, there was really nothing even in the pipeline. And we had probably 2 pay periods left. And so it still gets me. I started crying, they were crying. We just felt so much like we were onto something by giving young people a different seat at the table, that instead of being somebody's client, they were young leaders. We went to bed, I woke up in the morning, and I already had a voicemail when I checked. By the grace of God, quite frankly, it was Senator Patty Murray telling me that the proposal that I had written for $375,000 had been awarded, that we would be getting that money. I just think sometimes when we're here to celebrate such a remarkable achievement of where this organization is today, a lot of people might find it interesting and don't really know just how close we came to it not being here. But again, every time I see Senator Murray, she remembers. And so I just thought I'd share that story.
I love it.
So there's lots to be proud of, but really the staff and the volunteers and the board members, the donors who from the beginning start contributing and continue to this day to support this remarkable organization. And to the current staff, I want to say thank you. The current staff and board members and volunteers, I want to say thank you for continuing this vision and this legacy. I think we have 20 years of proof that including young people who have experienced foster care and or homelessness, including them in the process, results in better public policy, more effective programs, and certainly a more engaged and compassionate community.
As a young person who grew up in this city, I never got to see the side that was in poverty. I never got to see the side that wasn't foster care, that wasn't systems entrenched until I became a part of the Mockingbird family model. That is one experience, but that is one experience of many. I definitely feel like I've been put in a leadership position many times and had an opportunity to give back, but that's what it means to me. It means 20 years of leadership, 20 years of youth voice, 20 years of truth, 20 years of advocacy, 20 years of healing, 20 years of changing systems for the better. And I honestly cannot wait to see what 20 more years brings.